We send our apologies from our colleague Bridget Herrera, who would love to be here and sends a lot of sort of love and affection to all of you. Unfortunately, she is not able to join us today, so we will, Regina and I will be handling the session for on her behalf. But she certainly wishes she could be here, and she again hopes that all of you are doing very, very well. Regina, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Dan. So, hi everyone. My name is Regina. I'm based here in Jakarta, in Indonesia. I'm a counselor in the British School Jakarta. This is actually my second year in the British School Jakarta. So, I started in the school last year during the pandemic, and then I've worked in previous schools I've worked with. I've worked for 11 years as another international school in Jakarta, but overall, I've been in the education for over 15 years and as a university guidance counselor is the past 10 years. So, yeah, I'm really happy to be able to, even not face to face, meet you guys and then discuss about summer and other related with that program as well. So thanks, Dan, for asking me to join you. And I hope that next time the conference is held again next year, I'll be able to come and visit India. I've never been to India, so it's on my list. Thank you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, and again, so very, very excited that you're here joining us today. If you can go ahead into the next slide here, it gives a little bit of sense of what we're hoping to discuss today. Again, just kind of get thinking through what summer programs are, and we can talk about the various distinctions, the types of summer programs that are available to consider. Again, thinking through what are some viable aspects of a summer program, things you really should think through as you're counseling students and giving them options to consider. Again, really thinking through as well what might be some viable options to consider that might not be summer programs, and what are some unique programs that are part of events that take place in the summer. And to clarify as well, when we're talking about summer programs, we're primarily talking about, I would say, Northern Hemisphere summer programs. So primarily in terms of the time of year, primarily I would say is usually June, July, August, just so you have a good sense of the type of thing we're talking to. Typically corresponds to a northern hemisphere academic year, just to keep that in mind. And then again, of course, we're obviously in the midst of a very unique time, and so we are dealing with some of the virtual opportunities available and kind of thinking about the pros and cons there. And again, and I work primarily in university admissions as well, and so I'm happy to discuss with all of you about how summer program is considered from a university admissions perspective, specifically from the U.S. But I think that would be relevant to other institutions as well. So, but again, Regina and I are excited to connect with you. So please feel free to, as we're going through, if you have any questions or comments for us, please use the chat, and we'll be looking forward to engaging in this dialogue with you. But Regina, I believe you had the first section, so you want to go ahead and get started?
Yes. Can you please go next on the slide? All right, so I'm going to start with this. I mean, the keys or the goal of any university guidance programs or anything, we want to see success in students and applications. So one of the things that I discuss with them and also the parents is this. I feel that this is something that's really important for everyone. So I'll let you give you a few seconds to read through this and so it's not so a lot of psychological research or even a different other research and when we are talking about success and it's not we have sometimes the wrong conception about a success and what can drive us into different type of success but the most important thing is the character of the person or in this case an intellectual curiosity. This is like almost the backbone that drives us to continue and pursue our passion, to actually build then later on resilience because we're genuinely interested in expanding our knowledge, expanding our experience, and that in different stages in life, this will still apply and then actually in selecting summer programs, that's what I normally talk to the parents or the students. It's not just about filling in your CV, but it's actually to expand and to develop your intellectual curiosity. Next, please. So, how to develop this? So, basically, to actually have the conversation as early as possible with the students that learning should not be, again, just completing the task or for the sake of grades and everything, even though that is what measured in school, but still to actually develop that they really like, if they really like something, they should pursue it just because they want to know more about that, embracing what they don't know. So in my program in schools, I start as early as year 7 and 8, even too, so that they could they have things to do during their summers to actually increase that or develop their intellectual curiosity. Things like passion projects since early on is actually very good because students are kind of like forced and pushed to discover what they're interested in. I just did last year with a group of year 9. The passion project is actually to create, from clays to to statue to actually then working with others and developing ways better to create that program. And then also some students are actually starting to code. The others is actually like to engage with plants and actually coding what names. So a lot of things, and that from that we can help them to see what majors and then later on what career that might fit to that. So it's very good to develop. And then I mentioned that there is best fit. So that's something I keep on saying. My students know I'm like a broken record. Every time we talk about university or anything or career program, I keep saying the term best fit because um, building this intellectual curiosity and knowing what is actually you're passionate about, where it's actually will lead you to the best fit major and university. And in the end, hopefully that helps you to become more happy because one of the again I just took the course in Coursera actually from UPenn with Seligman, who is the founder of Authentic Happiness, and that's one of the things that people sometimes forget is happiness comes from the joy of actually doing something meaningful and enjoyment and things like that. So all of this is actually the one we normally ask students so that they do summer programs to develop this and to get their find their best fit. Next. All right. So there's a lot of things that you can do. When Dan mentioned that when we talk about summer program, we mainly talk about those summer programs with coordinated or organized by universities or in the northern hemisphere. But you can also do a lot of other programs, and that as you can see there, it's not always that, and then we'll discuss this later, what's the benefits, pros and cons of actually following this kind of program or actually doing something else on your own. Okay, next. Okay, so how to get started? So basically, as I mentioned, when students come to me and say that they want to do a summer program, the first thing I ask them is, "What is your goal? Um, are you do you want to pursue certain interests? Do you want to actually um, fulfill requirement of a university or your CAS program?" So that has to be clear because sometimes you will give a different advice on students. Let's say some universities does give credits to students when they attend a certain program, and that could be good if that students have the right profile and is aiming to go into that university. It's not a guarantee. Maybe Dan could add on this later on. We're going to discuss this as well, but knowing that from the start is actually good to know so that we can actually search for the right program for the students. Okay. We have different, so I always said that best fit is not only the program but also the location. So before the pandemic, it would be like whether you want to be in West Coast or East Coast later on, and or what type of university and college experience that you want, a big campus or small one, or you want to find something in Asia, because there's also a lot of summer programs actually, and Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, and Hong Kong previously. So we talk about all this, and then of course the requirements of the program itself. Some programs actually competitive. That means that you have to apply, and not everyone, or sorry, or selective. I should use that word. It's selective, so not everyone who apply will be able to attend the program, but some are more lenient. So it also worth to discuss with the students whether or not they want to apply to those kind of selective program or non-selective program. And at the same time, if they want to make sure that's the career they want to do, sometimes I recommend them to actually do an internship. It's more difficult right now during the pandemic, and in Indonesia we are still, everything's still online. But at the or what they can also do an interview, for example. So we try to find our alumni that actually work in that program and conduct an interview. So even though they cannot like maybe shadow them at work or something like that, but that interview will help them as well to know whether or not this is the right major, is it the right interest that for them. Because I had a student who actually wanting to become a veterinarian all her life, and after this is prior to the pandemic, she actually worked in one of the local zoo, and after months he came back and said, okay, I'm not gonna be a veterinarian. I hated the job. I love animals, but I do not want to be veterinarian or dealing with them in this case. So that's also the benefit, or actually conducting or participating in this kind of summer program or internship, so that students are really sure what they want or what they do not want to pursue. Next. All right. So, what's the benefit of the actual program going away versus other enrichment opportunities? So, I've mentioned that sometimes it's better to do something closer to home, especially if you know that that will create some networking experience and opportunities later on. But at the same time, I mean, we've just, if you're here when Dan and I are discussing that, I am a big believer of our that being physically in the space and connecting with the person face to face is totally different than having something online. Um, Previously, I've been to many counselor fly-in, and even though the website of the universities are amazing, but to actually put myself in the university, walk the path the students are walking, and talking to them, looking at where they're staying and their cafeteria, tasting the food even, it gives me such a different vibe. And so the same thing could happen for students who actually would want to check out a university as well. So a summer program in that particular university could help students to feel um, that environment. Okay, but for some students, especially in financial, that is something that we have to discuss as well. If financial students are not able to go to those places, probably staying closer at home or doing a program nearby probably more beneficial. Again, what is the goal? And we should be able to find that online as well. So the traditional summer program, for an old perspective, a lot of people feel that, oh, you have to have summer program on your CV if you're applying to an Ivy League or an elite universities. So it could boost up your um, competitiveness or your profile. Yes, to some extent. I will let Dan answer this later on, but at the same time, I would say to my student, it's the takeaways that's more important. In traditional summer programs, normally is you go to the university and then you learn something and then but at the same time there are a lot of other projects that you can do, a student-led project actually as a summer program, there are research projects. So there are actually a lot of things. So one of my students actually in the past, for their summer, is actually instead of contacting the university to join a summer program, it's actually reaching out to the professor to do a joint research, and they end up writing a journal together. So it's something out of the box. So and explore a lot of things instead of just the traditional one, looking outside the box. Some concern that we have normally, we ask students and parents as well to watch out for some programs. We actually said Harvard University or Yale or LMU or something, with something, or Oxbridge, that is actually just held in the university but not actually organized by the universities. So we have to be very careful and seeing, because sometimes if you are expecting to get credits but that summer program is not hosted by the university, that won't happen. The I think there's the Oxford summer program, something like that, is always in the Oxford University, but it's not by any means held by the Oxford University. It's just by the organization who works with the or collaborating with the Oxford and actually holding or hosting the summer program on the campus. It still has some benefits because you can still see the environment and then feel that, but it's not, depending on what is your goal, it's not, you have to be really careful about that as well. And we've talked about financial concern as well. So these are some things that actually we discuss with the students as well. Do you want to add anything, Daniel?
I think it's a great introduction so far. Thank you so much, Regina. I mean, I think it really gives you a good sense of the perspective of a counselor about in terms of working with these kind of summer programs. I'm happy to talk a little more from the university perspective in just a second, but I just wanted to pause for a minute. Again, we'd love to hear from you. So if you do have any questions for Regina, what you said so far, again, we can just pause for a second and feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat, or if anyone wants to speak from the audience about some of the things that Regina's mentioned so far, we'd be happy to address those right now. And again, we can just pause for a minute.
Anyone from the audience here in the room? Any questions for Regina? No. I think we're good, Daniel, here.
Okay. And we can come back to it
we
later.
do have
good.
a question.
Oh, actually, we do have
Sorry.
fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Daniel. We do have a question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I wanted to know, is there a common platform where we can know more about where all the summer programs or summer school programs are being organized? So at kind of a one-stop point. Thank you.
That's a great segue to a later portion of the presentation, which has a whole list of resources, which we'll be happy to share with you as well. I believe they might actually be placed in the IC3 app also. But yes, we will have a lot of additional resources towards the end of the presentation we'll be happy to share with you. Thank you for that question. Okay. And then, ready for this one, Regina? How effective are online summer programs organized by universities as opposed to actually experiencing in person, as fees-wise it's still expensive? Do you want to talk about that from the counseling perspective? And I'll be happy to address that in the university perspective as well.
Yes, of course. So basically, definitely, I mean, like, coming to the university itself, as I mentioned, is really, have a lot of benefits. But at the same time, when we can do that, we can take anything that is offered, which is like the online university program is still expensive. I understand that. But I would say that it comes back to what is the goal from actually doing the summer program. If you are looking for credits from that university, of course, that denies the other benefits that comes from other programs. But let's say if you are able to, I know that as in some parts of the world, things are open and you're able to come face to face doing an internship summer programs jobs or anything like that compared to online, I definitely feel that a face to face will be better. And if financial concern is there, I don't see. I would say that any programs is a good program as long as you get a benefit out of it. So I said to the students, you can intern by you can do as menial as like babysitting or something like that. So that's probably people like what babysitting, but if you can gain an experience out of that, I mean, yes, people doesn't like feel that that's probably, oh, that's not something that you need to write on a resume or something like that. But if you actually um, learn something from that, you adapt to younger kids, you actually practice your patience. If you actually also tutoring or help them with their schoolwork, that's something else. That so it's not what, it's more about how. And you participate in this activity, and the takeaways from that is more important, I would say.
Thank you, Regina. And I'm happy to address this as well, but I'm going to wait to just a little bit to when I have my section about university from the university perspective. It looks like we have someone else in the audience who has a question.
Yes, we do have.
Hi.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for such a thoughtful session. And I just have a very small question. Since career counseling starts from grade 9th onwards only, so I just wanted to know that if a student is doing or is undertaking any summer programs in either grade 9th or grade 10th, will that be helpful for him or her when she or he starts applying in grade 11th or grade 12th?
That's a great question. Yeah, go ahead. You want to address it from the counseling perspective, Regina?
Yes. For year 7, 8, 9, normally I would say do more of exploration of activities rather than maybe participating in more structured or university-based program, because I believe in up to that age, students are still considering and valuing their options. But at the same time, some of the students who actually just do an exchange program, I would not recommend any academic based summer programs, but more the ones that even go to a scout camp or are do or some people have religious camps, some other people have like hiking or anything. So those summer programs are actually developing skills, creating relationship opportunities. I would recommend that for the younger age, and that will help them because when they're older, when they're actually applying to more academic based summer program, at least they do not have that fear of the unknown anymore. They are used to meeting new people and adapting, and so that adaptation transition part, it will be smoother for them. So that would be my suggestions.
Thanks, Regina. And I would say just from again, so as a unique perspective of a university in the United States, I would just say that for the most part, it's we certainly appreciate learning more about students' summer program experiences, but we certainly don't have any kind of expectation that a student has done a specific type of experience over the summer, especially if they are a 9th grade, 10th grade student. So it's more to Regina's point. I mean, certainly see a lot of students who've been part of something like Duke of Edinburgh, for example, or have been involved in a project where they've gone to maybe explore other parts of the country or where they might be living, or maybe they're involved in some kind of nonprofit organization or things like that. There's lots of other things that could potentially be as impactful, I would say, as a summer program. And again, I'll talk about them more specifically about the things that are specific to LMU's summer program that I think is relevant to a lot of other institutions as well in just a second. But I think generally speaking, if you feel like you're speaking to a student who is convinced that a summer program is, to Regina's point earlier, absolutely essential to their ability to be admitted into a very selective institution, I would say that's not likely to be the case at all.
So
And again, I think we might have another question from the audience.
okay, so I have a question. Hi, my name is
Yes.
Amir. I'm
Well,
from Shivnala School. So Regina, I just wanted to ask you if there are two students. One student is, has done specific programs related to one particular course, and then you've got another student who's got diversity of experience, as in, has explored multiple options, has done some courses in arts and some courses in science, some courses with related to business. So how do you weight the two students, and if the two students are applying to the same program finally, in their class 12? So if you were to
And
weigh
I think
both the students.
probably your more of your avenue here.
yeah, I was going to say I'd be happy to address that question actually. So first of all, I think one of the challenges with trying to address a question like that, just to be clear, is that from a U.S. perspective, the application process and the review process varies significantly from institution to institution. And so there may be an institution that really very, very highly values the summer program and another that maybe not so much. And again, depending upon the type of experience a student may have, that might be something that could be very impactful for a U.S. institution or maybe not be impactful at all. Then you have an example of something like more like the UK kind of system where you're trying to demonstrate that you have. So if you're applying to medicine, you want to try to demonstrate that you've had experiences that are relevant to medicine before. So that's a little bit different conversation. So there isn't really a simple answer. That really depends upon the context that the student is interested in and the type of opportunity that the student would like to pursue in the future. Is what I would say is the best way to answer that question. Are you going to add anything, Regina?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience in helping students applying, again, it's not what you've done, but actually the takeaways. If you just have one program that actually, there's one student who actually in the past is actually really love manga, and then that's the only thing that she's been doing. But she actually doing manga in different kind of level. It's not only that she's doing it by herself. She builds a club. She organized that, and then she also participated in competition. So that one program actually helped her to develop a lot of skills. At the same time, there are students who are really like to active and involved, not just because of filling the CVs, because this particular student, he's really like active in classroom and things like that. And as when he has to select his activity, the best one, and how he presented himself in an essay for the university admission, he then picks and choose what is the similarity of those programs, what skills and ability that or character that he was able to develop from participating in different activities. So I think, like Daniel said, both have its own merit depending on how the students use that or what's the takeaways from those programs. I hope that answered the questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Regina. And again, thank you so much for these questions so far. Happy to adjust them further as we go. I wonder if we could go back to the slides here for just a second and go into the next slide, please. I just want to talk to you briefly about from the university perspective. First of all, just a note, again, I work at Loyola Marymount University, which is in Los Angeles, California. And so I'd like to give you a little bit of sense of what our specific program looked like before the pandemic and how that's adapted. And what I think you'll find is that a lot of programs are similar to ours from this perspective. And so, again, previous to the pandemic, this was an opportunity that was primarily focused on students who were primarily just about to be in their last year of secondary school. And so whether that would be through, just before sixth form, just before year 12, whatever year you might want to think of, that's primarily the group that we were talking to. And the idea was that these were students who would be coming to Los Angeles. They would be spending roughly 2 to 3 weeks, depending upon the course they selected. They would be living in the residence halls. In addition to the course they'd be taking, there would also be opportunities for them to meet current students, to be able to explore areas within Los Angeles, to really get a good sense of the place. Again, to connect with actual professors from the university, and so getting a little bit of a sense of what that academics would look like. But for the most part, most of the courses that we offered were not credit bearing. And so the idea was that you would go, and to Regina's points earlier, you really were interested in manga, or you were interested in filmmaking, or you were interested in, a number of different subjects like that. And so you would take this 2 to 3 week course, and so you get a chance to really explore and get a sense of what it would be like to be on a college campus. So a lot of the focus was not so much on the academic credit that you would be able to take with you to other institutions necessarily, but the idea was that this is a kind of a brief introduction to what it would be like to be a college student. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, our program was run by LMU staff. That's not the case everywhere. And so, just to reinforce that point that Regina has made, there's not an expectation if you're going to, for example, to a summer program at Harvard or Brown or UCLA or anything like that. There's not some kind of expectation that because you've gone to a summer program at that institution, that therefore you have a much, much better chance of being admitted to their institution as a full-time student. I would say that's very rare. For the most part, these are opportunities. Again, these are enrichment opportunities. These are opportunities for you as a student to really understand, what it would be like to be a student in Los Angeles, in Boston, in London, in Tokyo, whatever the location might be, so that you get a sense of what it would be like. So again, some of that would be some housing. Some institutions would offer opportunities for you to actually live within the residence halls. Others would just be within the general area. There certainly are, at least in LMU's perspective, and I'm sure this is the case in a lot of other programs as well, a pretty broad base of experiences that are not just the course they're taking. And so things like learning from current students about doing a student panel about what life is like as a student, talking about things like the admissions process with them, exploring more about resources on the campus in terms of working the library and things like that too, right? So there's a lot of those kind of questions that are typically, I would think, part of a lot of institutions. Because our program is primarily not credit bearing, that actually made things a little bit easier in terms of the visa process. And again, that's going to vary from country to country. But there was not an expectation that because you were studying at a non-credit bearing course, that you had to have a student visa to do any of these kind of programs. So it made it a little bit easier from that perspective. And again, in terms of there was an expectation that students would pay for the tuition to be part of this program, that they would pay for the ability to transportation and get there, things like that. So there was a limited amount, and continues to be the case, a limited amount of financial aid and scholarship opportunities for a summer program specifically. So again, that's all pre-pandemic. Now, when we transitioned to the current situation, those experiences became virtual. And so, again, a lot of that experience changed. Obviously, the opportunity to really explore the location where the institution was located was no longer possible. The opportunity to live in the residence hall was no longer possible, all those kind of things, right? So obviously that we transitioned into providing more virtual experiences, finding ways for students to connect with each other via Zoom meetings, via other types of online experiences. The classes became virtual, things like that. And so, there's definitely some pros and cons there. And so we'll talk about that when we get to the next slide as well. But again, just to get a sense of how that transition happened. And so again, giving you a sense that continues to be the case, or it continued to be the case this current summer. So this current June and July, the hope is that for June, July 2022, we'll be able to go back to an experience where students can actually be physically present on our campus over those months. So again, in terms of a lot of the questions here, that's an example of a program that was run by institution. But again, there are lots of other examples where it's just merely hosted on the campus and run by a third party, or it's run by an extension program or something like that. So it's rare that a program that's a summer program like this is really directly tied into some kind of funnel, such that if you're into the summer program, that kind of guarantees you a really high opportunity to be admitted to the institution. That's not all that common, especially as you get into more selective institutions around Oxford, Oxbridge, and Ivy Leagues in the U.S. and things like that. So we can go to the next slide, please. So again, just thinking through about when you're talking to a student, why would you want to really seriously consider an opportunity like this? Again, you have the opportunity primarily to speak with, these are legitimately college professors. And so this is an opportunity for a student to really understand what that dynamic might be like, and especially if they're considering studying in another country, really getting an introduction to what an American style classroom might look like, or what a British style classroom might look like, especially if they're coming from South Asia, for example. Certainly, if you have an opportunity to live on campus, there's a lot of benefits, or live in the student housing, if even if it's off campus. Again, there's some benefits to that opportunity of understanding what that social experience might be like, living with other students, and understanding what resources might be available for resident students, things like that. Certainly get a chance to, if you're physically there, getting a sense of whether you, as a student, really appreciate being in Los Angeles or being in London or wherever it might be, right? And getting into the distance from home and how comfortable you are with that, those kind of things. Obviously, the fact that it's a limited kind of experience is a big one to keep in mind as well. Most summer programs tend to be shorter, and so it's an opportunity for you to, again, get a brief introduction to college life without having to commit to something long term. And to some of the points that Regina's have made earlier, you're not necessarily committing to, being a veterinarian forever. You're committing to taking a class that gives you a taste of what it would be like to be a veterinarian. So giving you a sense of whether this is something you'd really seriously want to consider in the future. And again, other resources are typically made available to you within the summer programs as well. So it's not just the class you're taking, it's also the additional pieces of, okay, if I wanted to attend this institution in the future, what would that look like? How can I what financial resources are available? What kind of opportunities can I look into for professional development, things like that, right? And then of course there's some negative consideration, or some things that were more on the con side of the thing, ledger, I would say. As we transition to virtual experiences, some of those classes transition very well to a virtual experience. So a screenwriting course, for example, can easily be taught in an online experience and actually could be beneficial for students to be involved in, versus something like a filmmaking course would be very challenging to be able to transition from virtual to, or from in-person to a virtual experience. Again, I mentioned that a lot of summer programs have a limited amount of costs. That means there are certainly some barriers from that perspective in terms of the financial aspect, and really thinking through about, as you're working with students, is this something that makes sense for them to commit to be able to be involved in something like this, a short-term experience like this? Is that a consideration they want to keep in mind? There typically are, depending upon the program you're interested in, or your student is interested in, some kind of application requirements. So from the U.S. perspective, for example, our students, do they have access to something like the PSAT or the TOEFL or the IELTS or something like that? If that's one of the expectations, then you have to really think through how that might be possible and keep it in mind. But also to know as well that, again, summer programs tend to be relatively smaller as compared to the larger student enrollment. And so just keep in mind that even if a student is very, very excited about a specific opportunity and is absolutely committed to that specific experience, there's always the possibility that simply there's just not enough spaces for that student to be involved in it. So again, that's really important to recognize whatever that application process would be, and really to be on top of that, and to really counsel a student from that perspective to make sure they're prepared for whatever that application process would entail. So if you go to the next slide here, as I promised, we have a lot of resources that are available as well, and so that'll be in the next slide in just a little bit. But again, just to reinforce, there's not even an implicit sense necessarily that just because you've gone to the Harvard summer program, for example, that therefore Harvard is going to look at you and say, this is absolutely a student we want merely because of the fact that the student attended a summer program at Harvard or Oxbridge or wherever other institution, right? So it's just one other aspect, certainly something that can be considered highly depending upon the institution and the type of program that's available, but certainly something that wouldn't necessarily be a negative if the student was not involved in it, or necessarily something that was such a huge positive that would definitely sway an admissions decision necessarily. We mentioned a few times the whole concept of who's actually running this program. And again, all those kind of questions as well are very important. Depending upon who's running the program, that might affect, if you are taking a credit-bearing course, where that credit is issued from and whether that specific course credit would actually apply for a student in the future. And certainly if a student's goal is really to have a significant amount of advanced placement credit or advanced credit before they enroll in an institution, they're going to be better off considering something like an international baccalaureate or an AP or something along those lines in terms of being able to get advanced credit, at least from the US perspective. And so again, the other thing to note as well is that typically the main difference with these pre-college programs is that additional programming piece. So providing things like student life, excursions, and getting to know the local area, as opposed to something which would be simply just taking a course, which is certainly possible as well for students who just want to enroll in a course for the summer. That's often available at a lot of institutions. But again, that would be without the additional components of being able to really explore those additional aspects of being a college student, basically. And so again, I think there are certainly a lot of beneficial things that can happen within the virtual space. I know that that's certainly something that can seem difficult to really see a lot of positives in a virtual context when you consider the alternatives of an in-person experience. But certainly the feedback we received from employers, for example, or from students who've been involved in virtual experiences is that they really do appreciate the opportunity to demonstrate their adaptability and their flexibility. And we certainly anticipate that the hybrid space and the virtual space is not going away anytime soon. And so being able to demonstrate you can be effective in those roles is really very valuable as well. So if we can go on to the next slide about some resources here. To answer the question from a while ago, if you go on to the next slide, I think it might be here. I don't know if Regina, I've spoken a lot. I don't know if you want to talk through some of these resources. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, so just
and if you want to talk through some of these, yeah.
Yeah, just to add a little bit on what you said, I would say it goes back to what is the goal of your activities, like what do you want to accomplish this summer. Is it personal development? Is it to fill in your CAS requirements if you're in DP students in 12 and 13? Are you want to show that you're more competitive by doing some competitions or internship programs? It depends on what's the goal, and again, these are general programs that comes from the universities. This is just very limited list. Unfortunately, there aren't any one-stop shopping kind of thing that you can go to find this. A lot of it you have to browse through. College Board is actually helpful if you find like summer programs in the US, but many of these programs you just have to be in contact with the university rep or actually browse through the websites. Okay, next slide, please.
Yes, if you want just a second, to answer the question, yes, I do believe that these PowerPoint slides will be available to you if they're not already through the app. And just to highlight one of the resources here, to address the question we received a while back, is there a good repository for summer programs in general? I would say I would just highlight a couple of them. If you go here to the bottom, first of all, you have the International Association for College Admission Counseling, which has a list of different courses that students can consider. And that can be based on various different countries. And then specifically, Summer Study in the USA is a repository for summer programs. It's very new, but the idea basically is if you're looking for specifically programs in the US, I definitely encourage you to take a look at that link as well. And again, my understanding is that this will be available to you if it's not already very soon.
Yep.
So Evan, go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, so if financial is an issue, like there's so many different online programs that are actually free from various universities that actually in March I participated in a Coursera program from University of Pennsylvania for authentic happiness, things like that, and I paid almost like just $10 for the certificate at the end, but it's the entirely free, and it's from the University of Pennsylvania, and with Dr. Seligman, who's actually working with authentic happiness research, which I want to know further. And then students should be able to gain some of the virtual college experience using different part of this online programs. There are different CAS activities ideas, even if you're stuck at your home, that these online platforms is actually offering for students. So yes, it's better, I would say, face-to-face, but we need to just utilize whatever it is that is available for us to take, right? So, all right, next, I think we also have a non-university programs, research program, leadership exchange, and then STEM work experience. So there are a lot of out there as well. So some of the organization that actually work on, I think it's Lumiere or something, that actually help students and connect them with either professors or professionals in the industry to work and help them to actually create a research paper. So that's something interesting to do as well. You don't have to sit and follow the university programs, but those other programs also available. So next
Okay.
one.
Oh yeah. Yes. And go ahead. Sorry. I
No
just wanted
worries.
to mention, I know that we're starting to come to the end of this. So again, thank you so much for your time and attention today. We have a couple more things to mention, Regina, and then I know we have a couple of questions. We're happy to address as many as we can in the time that we have left. So I think, the single one, the next slide, please.
Yes. So this for internship, remote internship as well, and then so basically it's there for you to utilize, and hopefully that's helpful. So I think we'll better go to questions right now.
Okay. And so again, thanks for letting us know, Liz. Hopefully, hopefully you will have these slides available so that you can actually, see these and be able to read them a little bit more easily. Meghna has an interesting question about, do you know specifically courses that would be enriched programs for math that maybe you can address, Regina? And are you aware of any courses like that?
Yes, I think like in Canada, I know that some of the universities, not always, but some universities are able to accommodate if student doesn't have certain requirements, subject requirements that they need. They have like for in the Netherlands, they have additional mathematics for those who are taking the lower level mathematics in IB. Additional ones they have to take. In Canada, they have different test formats as well, and as well as for if the student's not taking chemistry. But you have to be in contact with those universities to know what's available or what is acceptable as well. Okay. So yes, so basically, check with the universities and see what program. Some in the future, in the past, I know that they also accept probably additional.
Oh, I think you might have just accidentally hit your mute button.
Oh,
There you go.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. So where were I? Where was I?
I just talking about math and reach and courses in general. I think we just really to just emphasize that point. Yeah, and again, I know we're coming to right about the end of our session, so just one more time, just want to thank you so much for your time and attention and spending it with us today. Anything just last minute takeaway you want to mention, Regina, before we go?
I would say if your students are considering summer programs, make sure that they have the right motives and goals, and to pursue more of personal enjoyment or developing intellectual curiosity rather than just finding activities to fill in their CV. Because as you mentioned, Dan, it is still whether or not it is considered as to boost your profile, it's still unsure. I mean, it's always positive, but not guaranteeing that you will get accepted just because you have extra lists of summer programs on your CV.
Yeah, I would just wholeheartedly agree with that. I just think it's really important to think about summer programs as opportunities to really test drive or really just kind of explore what a university life could be like. And just to really think that when you're considering these kind of opportunities with students, really keep that in mind, and not as some kind of experience that would be, a dramatically impactful opportunity that would really make a huge difference in a university application. And it looks like we have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Neha. I actually had a question related to what you were just discussing. How does a student get to know that if this is a summer program I'm doing, will this be fruitful for my application or not? This is my one question, which half you have already answered. The second one is, Regina, earlier in the earlier section, you mentioned about the research projects, right? So a few of our students are writing research projects, but they are not very well are aware, at what step can they approach the university professors, and what would be a preferred way of approaching them. So, yeah.
Okay. So I'm just gonna answer from my experience with my students. It's always good that if you're in contact with the university representative, that sometimes could help them link to the professors. Some through their own connections, or basically just emailing the professors. And I also said to the students to make sure when you're contacting them, you come with something, with an idea, with a concept, with a project. So if you are contacting the right professor that is related with your project, you can't just contact them and, hey, I'm interested in project with you, but nothing else. So of course they might not respond to that, but it's always good that you have some sort of connection through the university representative, or if it's a direct email to the university professors. I always said to the students when we like drafting the email to make sure you have a solid like questions or projects that you need their expertise. So I would say that half of the occasion that we did that, the university professor at least answered back with, "Oh, okay, I'm interested, but I'm only able to give these materials for you to read." But they still responded. So I would say, go ahead and try to contact them. But if you have some connection or through the university representative, that will be even better.
Thanks, Regina. And I'll try to address this last question. I know we're already a little bit over time, but is there a common portal to check of a list of universities award credits for AP courses or certain other participants? Correct me if I'm wrong, Regina. I'm not aware of a list like that or a repository like that. That's one of the challenges, honestly, especially with the U.S. context. What would be fantastic would be if all of the universities in the United States got together and said, you know what? We're going to make this simple for students, and so we're going to ask for the exact same things at the exact same times. We're all going to have standard policies for all of our admission processes and award things the same way and all that kind of stuff. That would be wonderful, but the reality is that's not what happens. And so realistically, one of the challenges with the role that you have as counselors is really helping students understand that each institution, especially in the U.S. context, essentially operates as an independent entity. And so that specific institution decides what kind of policies they're going to have, what they're going to accept, what kind of credit they're going to award, all those kind of decisions, such that it's really important for the student as they're thinking about some institutions that really interest them to go through and actually research and look into further what that specific policy is for each institution that interests them. As a general rule of thumb, typically 4 or 5 is in most institutions in the U.S. considered a pretty strong score for an AP test, and in theory could award you advanced credit. But again, it's going to vary so much from place to place that it's really hard to do a general statement, and I'm not aware of any kind of repository for how institutions award credit for AP classes. It may exist, but again, I'm just not aware of it. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and attention today. Regina, it's been wonderful to talk with you. And thank you all of you who joined us in person and online today. Really appreciate your interest in this topic. And we are very much excited to explore this in the future with you as well, if that's an opportunity as well. So have a great day. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.